A desperate offer. The fluorescent lights of Mount Sinai Hospital buzzed overhead as Natalie Brooks sat in the sterile waiting room, clutching a folder that held papers she could barely afford to print. 28 years old and already drowning in medical debt. Her hands shook as she calculated the numbers again, hoping somehow the math would change. It never did. Hannah needed another surgery. The experimental treatment that could save her life cost $200,000. And insurance would cover maybe a quarter of that. Natalie had already sold everything valuable she owned, maxed out 3 credit cards, and borrowed from everyone who would listen. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, her best friend and coworker at the design studio. "How's Hannah? Need anything?" She typed back quickly. "She's stable. I'm fine." The lies came easier these days. An unexpected proposition 3 days later. Natalie found herself in the sleek lobby of Whitfield Technologies, a glass tower in midtown Manhattan that seemed to pierce the clouds. She adjusted her only interview suit, bought at a thrift store in Queens, and tried not to feel like an imposter among the designer-clad professionals flowing through the marble halls. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Whitfield will see you now." The assistant led her to the top floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire city sprawling below. James Whitfield stood with his back to her, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored navy suit, dark hair styled with casual precision. "Thank you for coming," he said, turning around. His gray eyes assessed her quickly, but not unkindly. "Please, sit." Natalie lowered herself into a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Mr. Whitfield, I appreciate the meeting, but I'm not sure why you wanted to see me. My studio submitted designs for your new app interface, but usually those meetings happen with my boss. I'm not here about designs." James sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "I'm here to offer you a job. A very specific, very unusual job." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of job?" "The kind where you'd need to sign a confidentiality agreement before we continue this conversation." He slid a single page across the glass table between them. Natalie scanned it quickly. Standard legal language about not disclosing the contents of their discussion. She signed, curiosity overcoming caution. James leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "I need a wife, temporarily, and I'm prepared to pay $3 million for 2 years of your time." The arrangement. Natalie laughed, a sharp sound in the quiet office. "Is this some kind of joke? Are there cameras?" "No joke. No cameras." James opened a folder and pulled out documents. "My grandfather's will stipulates that I must be married before my 34th birthday, to inherit controlling shares of the company. That's in 6 months. I've spent the last year looking for someone suitable for my social circle, and every single candidate saw this as an opportunity for something permanent." "And you don't want permanent," Natalie said slowly, beginning to understand. "I don't want complications. I don't believe in love, marriage, or family in the traditional sense. But I need this inheritance to maintain control of the company my grandfather built." He pushed the documents toward her. "You need money for your sister's medical bills." "I did my research." He'd flooded Natalie's face. "You investigated me?" "I investigate everyone I do business with." Hannah Brooks, age 24, diagnosed with systemic lupus 3 years ago. Recent complications requiring specialized treatment not covered by standard insurance. His tone was matter-of-fact, but something flickered in his eyes. "I lost my younger brother to leukemia when I was 20. I understand what it's like to watch someone you love suffer because of money." The unexpected vulnerability in his voice made her pause. This wasn't just a cold business transaction to him either. "What would this arrangement entail?" she asked carefully. The contract. James opened the folder fully. "A legal marriage that lasts 2 years. Minimum. We'd live together in my penthouse to maintain appearances. You'd attend necessary social functions as my wife. In exchange, you receive $1 million upon signing. $1 million at the 1-year mark and $1 million when we divorce after 2 years in the rules. Separate bedrooms. Separate lives as much as possible. This is strictly business. No romantic involvement. No physical relationship. We maintain the illusion in public, but in private, we're simply roommates, bound by a contract." Natalie's mind raced. $3 million. Hannah's treatment fully covered. Maybe even enough left over for her to finally open her own design studio. But the cost wasn't just financial. What happens if one of us falls in love with someone else during these 2 years? She asked. Discretion is required, but I don't control your personal life beyond what's necessary to maintain appearances. As long as nothing becomes public knowledge, what you do in your private time is your business. He paused. I don't expect this to be a hardship. I work 80-hour weeks. You'll barely see me. She thought of Hannah, pale and weak in her hospital bed. She thought of her mother, working 2 jobs at 60 years old to help with medical bills. She thought of all the dreams she'd put on hold because survival took everything she had. I need to see Hannah get her treatment started before I agree to anything, Natalie said firmly. And I want my own lawyer to review this contract. For the first time, James smiled. It transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable. Smart, I expected nothing less. I'll have the first payment transferred today as a show of good faith. Use it for your sister's surgery. We can finalize the contract next week. He stood and extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Miss Brooks? Natalie rose, her heart pounding. This was insane. This was probably the worst decision she'd ever make. But when she thought of Hannah's smile, of giving her sister a real chance at life, the choice became clear. She shook his hand. We have a deal, Mr. Whitfield. New beginnings. 1 week later, Natalie stood in front of City Hall in a simple white dress, holding a bouquet of flowers David had insisted on buying. James wore a charcoal suit, and they were surrounded by 2 witnesses from his legal team. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," James leaned in and brushed his lips against her cheek so quickly, she barely felt it. Welcome to the family. Mrs. Whitfield, he murmured, and she caught the faintest hint of his cologne. Something expensive and woody. That evening, as she unpacked her belongings in the guest bedroom of his enormous penthouse, Natalie caught her reflection in the mirror. She wore a platinum wedding band on her left hand. Her name was now legally Natalie Whitfield. She'd sold 2 years of her life to save her sister. The question was whether she'd lose herself in the process. Living with a stranger the first morning in James's penthouse, Natalie woke to silence so complete it felt unnatural. In Queens, she'd grown accustomed to sirens, garbage trucks, and the constant hum of the city. Here, 43 floors above Manhattan, the world felt muted and distant. She found James already in the kitchen, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black slacks, reading something on his tablet while drinking coffee. Good morning, she said awkwardly. Suddenly aware of her worn pajamas and messy hair, he glanced up briefly. Coffee's fresh. I have meetings all day. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, comes at 9. She'll show you around and get you anything you need. I'll be home around 10 tonight. That late? That's early for me. He grabbed his suit jacket from the back of a chair. Oh, there's a credit card on the counter. For household expenses and anything you need, no limit. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne and an uncomfortable silence. Natalie picked up the black credit card. Her name embossed in silver letters, Natalie Whitfield. It felt like holding someone else's life. Adjusting to a new world, Mrs. Chen arrived exactly at 9, a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. She showed Natalie through the penthouse. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a library, a home gym, and a terrace with views that made her dizzy. Mr. Whitfield. He works too much, Mrs. Chen said as they toured the pristine kitchen. Sometimes he sleeps at the office. Now maybe with you here, he comes home more. Natalie doubted that, but smiled politely. David called during lunch. How's married life in the ivory tower? Weird. I've seen my husband for exactly 15 minutes today. Well, at least the view's probably amazing. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Looking out at the city spread below, like a glittering carpet. Yeah, the view is incredible. I just feel like I'm living in a museum. Give it time. Maybe you two will actually become friends. Maybe, she said. Though she wasn't sure she believed it. The first event Friday evening, James texted her for the first time all week. Charity gala tomorrow night. Car picks you up at 7. Wear something formal. Natalie stared at her closet in panic. She owned exactly one formal dress, and it was 5 years old and definitely not suitable for whatever high society event James frequented. Mrs. Chen appeared in her doorway as if summoned by Natalie's distress. Mr. Whitfield said you might need help. Come with me. She led Natalie to a bedroom that had been converted into a dressing room, racks of designer dresses in every color filling the space. He had these sent over, Mrs. Chen explained. His assistant knows your size. Natalie touched a midnight blue gown, the fabric like water under her fingers. The price tag was still attached, $8,000. For one dress. This is too much, she whispered. This is your life now, Mrs. Chen said gently. Might as well enjoy the nice parts. A night of pretending, the Waldorf Astoria ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Natalie felt like an actress in a movie as James guided her through the crowd, his hand warm on the small of her back. Remember, he murmured near her ear, we're madly in love. We met at a design conference 6 months ago and couldn't resist each other, right? Madly in love. She forced a smile as an older couple approached. James, we heard the news. Congratulations on your marriage. Thank you, Robert. This is my wife, Natalie. The evening became a blur of introductions, false smiles, and fabricated stories about their whirlwind romance. James played his part perfectly, touching her hand, finishing her sentences, looking at her with practiced affection. Then Rebecca Thompson appeared. She was stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than Natalie's car. With platinum blonde hair and sharp blue eyes that assessed Natalie like a predator sizing up prey. James. Darling, Rebecca purred, air-kissing both his cheeks. I was devastated to miss your wedding. Though I must say it was quite sudden. When you know, James said smoothly. Rebecca turned her attention to Natalie. And you're the graphic designer from Queens, correct? How absolutely charming. James always did have eclectic taste. Condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Actually, I'm an art director, Natalie corrected, lifting her chin. I specialize in user interface design for tech companies. Perhaps you've seen my work for the Anderson app. It won 3 industry awards last year. Rebecca's smile tightened. How impressive. Though I imagine you'll be giving up work now that you've married so well. Why would I do that? Natalie felt James's hand tighten slightly on her waist. I love my career. James supports my ambitions completely. How modern, Rebecca said, her tone suggesting it was anything but a compliment. James, we should catch up properly sometime. I'm sure we have much to discuss about the Berkshire deal. Actually, we don't, James said, his voice cooling. That deal is closed, and so is any discussion about it. If you'll excuse us. I promised my wife a dance. He guided Natalie to the dance floor before Rebecca could respond. An unexpected connection. I'm sorry about that, James said as they moved to the slow music. Rebecca and I dated briefly 2 years ago. She has trouble accepting that it ended. She's beautiful, Natalie observed. She's calculating. There's a difference. His gray eyes met hers. You handled that well. The part about your awards was a nice touch. It was true. I do have awards. I know. I read your portfolio before I hired you. They swayed in silence for a moment. And Natalie became acutely aware of how close they were, how his hand felt against her back, how he smelled like cedar and something uniquely him. Why did you really choose me? She asked quietly. You could have hired any actress, any model. Someone used to this world. James was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you're real. Everyone in my life wants something from me. Money, connections, status. You were honest about what you needed. There's something refreshing about that. Before she could respond, another couple bumped into them, pushing Natalie closer against James's chest. For a moment, their faces were inches apart. She saw something flicker in his eyes that looked almost like longing. Then he stepped back, the moment broken. We should probably mingle more. Patricia Morgan is here, and she's my most important business partner. I need her to believe this is real. Late-night revelations, they returned to the penthouse after midnight. Natalie kicked off her heels with a groan of relief. Those shoes are torture devices, she muttered. Padding barefoot across the marble floor, James loosened his tie, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. You want some wine? I could use a drink after tonight. Sure, they ended up on the terrace. The city lights spread before them like fallen stars. Natalie wrapped herself in one of the throw blankets James kept outside and accepted. A glass of red wine? Your ex really doesn't like me. She observed Rebecca doesn't like anyone who has something she wants. James leaned against the railing. She expected me to propose last year. When I didn't, she moved on to a hedge fund manager. Now she's realizing he's not as wealthy as she thought. And you're sure you don't believe in love? Natalie asked, surprising herself with the boldness of the question. James turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I believe love is a chemical reaction people mistake for destiny. It fades, it fails, it leaves people broken. That's incredibly cynical. It's incredibly realistic. He took a sip of wine. My parents have been married for 35 years. They barely speak to each other. They sleep in separate wings of their house. But they maintain appearances because that's what people in our world do. That sounds lonely. It is. Said it so quietly she almost missed it. But it's honest in its own way. They don't lie to each other about what their marriage is. Natalie studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way the city lights reflected in his eyes. Is that what we're doing? Being honestly lonely together? James looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment, his carefully constructed walls seemed to crack. I don't know what we're doing. This was supposed to be simple. Nothing about this is simple, Natalie whispered. They stood there on the terrace, two strangers bound by a contract, and felt the first tremors of something neither of them had planned for, something that felt dangerously like connection. The crisis 3 weeks into their arrangement, Natalie's phone rang at 2 a.m. She fumbled for it in the darkness of her bedroom, her heart already racing with the instinct that late-night calls never brought good news. Is this Natalie Brooks? An unfamiliar voice asked. Whitfield. Natalie Whitfield. The name still felt strange on her tongue. This is Dr. Amanda Foster from Mount Sinai. Your sister Hannah was admitted to the emergency room an hour ago. You're listed as her emergency contact. The world tilted. What happened? Is she okay? Her kidneys are failing? We need you here immediately to discuss treatment options. Natalie was out of bed and pulling on clothes before she'd even hung up. Her hands shook so badly she could barely zip her jeans. This was her nightmare. The scenario she'd feared since Hannah's diagnosis. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the door, only to find James standing in the hallway in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair mussed from sleep. What's wrong? He asked, taking in her panicked expression. Hannah Hospital. I have to go. The words came out in gasps. I'll drive you. You don't have to. I'm driving you. His tone left no room for argument. Waiting the hospital emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Dr. Foster met them in the waiting area, her expression grave. Hannah's stable for now, but her kidneys aren't functioning properly. We need to start dialysis immediately and get her on the transplant list. How long for a transplant? Natalie asked, gripping the arms of her chair. Could be months, could be years. In the meantime, she'll need dialysis 3 times a week. Natalie felt the room spin. Even with the money from James, this was going to be a long, difficult road. Can I see her? Family only right now? James stood up. I'm her brother-in-law. The lie came so smoothly that Natalie almost believed it herself. Dr. Foster nodded and led them through the double doors. Hannah looked tiny in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that beeped rhythmically. Her eyes opened when they entered. Nat, she whispered. Sorry to scare you. Don't apologize. Natalie took her sister's hand, fighting back tears. You're going to be fine. We'll figure this out. Hannah's gaze moved to James. You must be the husband I've been hearing about. The one Nat refuses to bring to meet me. I wanted to wait until you were feeling better, Natalie said quickly. I'm James. I stepped closer to the bed, and something in his expression softened. It's nice to finally meet you, Hannah. You're prettier in person than in the magazines, Hannah said with a weak smile. Nat did good. Over the next several hours, James never left. He brought Natalie coffee from the cafeteria, made phone calls to his assistant to clear his schedule, and sat quietly while she held her sister's hand. When the doctors needed to run more tests, he guided Natalie to a private waiting room and let her cry against his shoulder without saying a word. "You didn't have to stay," she said eventually, wiping her eyes. "I know you have important meetings. Nothing's more important than this." He said it simply, as if it were obvious. Breaking point, they returned to the penthouse at dawn. Exhausted and emotionally drained. Natalie headed straight for her bedroom, but James's voice stopped her. "Natalie, wait." She turned. He stood in the hallway, his t-shirt wrinkled, his hair messy, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. "I want to pay for Hannah's treatment. All of it. Dialysis, eventual transplant, recovery, and whatever she needs. That's not part of our agreement." "I don't care about the agreement." He moved closer. "Your sister shouldn't suffer because we're playing by arbitrary rules. James, you're already paying me $3 million. I can't take more." "Why not?" "Because then I really am just someone who married you for money." The words burst out of her, raw and honest. "Because I need to maintain some shred of dignity in this situation. Because I need to know I'm not completely selling myself." "You're not selling yourself," James said, his voice intense. "You're accepting help from someone who cares what happens to you." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to acknowledge. "We barely know each other," Natalie whispered. "Don't we?" He stepped closer still, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. "I know you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you work late every Tuesday because that's when your team has creative sessions. I know you call your mother every Sunday morning. I know you cry during insurance commercials because you're thinking about Hannah. James, I know that you're strong and brave and you put everyone else before yourself. I know that this started as a business arrangement, but somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like business." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "We have rules. The contract. Forget the contract." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Tell me you don't feel this too. Tell me I'm imagining it." She couldn't lie when he was looking at her like that, when his touch made her skin feel electric. When every rule they'd established felt meaningless compared to this moment. "I feel it," she admitted, "but I'm scared. What if this is just proximity? What if we're confusing gratitude and convenience for something more? Then we'll figure it out." His forehead rested against hers. "But right now, in this moment, I know that watching you hurt tonight hurt me. I know that I don't want to sleep in a separate bedroom. Oh, that this hasn't felt like pretending for a long time." The truth, rain, began to fall outside, droplets streaking the windows like tears. Natalie closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of James's breath against her skin. "What about after 2 years?" she asked. "What happens when the contract ends? Maybe we write a new contract, one that has nothing to do with inheritance or money. One that's just about two people who found something real in the middle of something fake." She opened her eyes to find him watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "So am I," he smiled slightly. "I've spent my whole life believing love was a lie people told themselves. And then you walked into my office in that thrift store suit with your stubborn pride and your fierce love for your sister. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure anymore. James, I need you to understand something." She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it beat rapidly beneath her palm. "I'm still going to work. I'm still going to be me. I won't become someone who just exists in your shadow. I don't want you in my shadow. I want you beside me. As an equal, as a partner, someone who challenges me and calls me out when I'm being an arrogant fool. That's going to happen a lot," she warned. "I'm counting on it." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his lips met hers, it felt nothing like their awkward wedding kiss. This was real and urgent and filled with weeks of denied attraction. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Natalie rested her head against his chest. "This complicates everything," she murmured. "Good. I was getting bored with simple." New beginnings. The next morning, Natalie woke in James's bedroom, wrapped in his arms, sunlight streaming through the windows. For a moment, panic gripped her. They'd crossed every line they'd established. They'd broken every rule in their contract. Then James's arms tightened around her, and he pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Stop overthinking," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "I can hear your brain spinning from here. We should probably talk about this. We should. But first, coffee." They ended up back on the terrace, wrapped in blankets against the morning chill, watching the city wake up below them. Mrs. Chen had left breakfast on the counter with a note. "About time. Took you long enough." Natalie laughed when she read it. "Not subtle, is she?" "She's been telling me for weeks that I was an idiot." James pulled her closer. Apparently everyone could see it except us. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Hannah's doing better this morning.
Actors are optimistic."
How are you holding up?" She showed James the message. "I should go back to the hospital. We'll go together." He kissed her temple. "And Natalie, I meant what I said about paying for Hannah's treatment. Not as your husband by contract, but as someone who loves you." Her breath caught. "You love me?" "I'm fairly certain I started falling for you during our first meeting when you refused to be intimidated by me." He turned her to face him. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated, but yes, I love you." Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they were happy ones. "I love you too. Even though you're arrogant and bossy and you work too much, I'll work less, starting now." He stood, pulling her up with him. "Let's go see your sister. Let's tell her that her brother-in-law is going to make sure she gets the best care possible. Not because of a contract, but because that's what family does." 6 months later, the journalists exposed never materialized. Thomas Grant had approached them 3 months earlier, threatening to reveal the truth about their arrangement. James had looked at Natalie, and she'd looked back at him, and they'd both smiled. "Print whatever you want," James had told him. "Yes, our marriage started as a contract, but it became something real. If that's a scandal, then I guess we're scandalous." Grant had left empty-handed, apparently finding genuine love less interesting than manufactured drama. Hannah's transplant had been successful, with their mother turning out to be a perfect donor match.